room on the brainstem to stitch the
it.
nerve in. And they knew the nerve they took out of his foot and transplanted in his head, they knew it was live because when they tested it, before they closed his head up, it sparked.
Oh, okay.
So they knew, okay, we've got something going on here. But they could not tell us what that regeneration would look like. If you met him on the street today, you would not know he had that going on. He walks perfectly fine. Aside from a few things, he has an eyebrow that doesn't move.
Does he have hearing aids?
He lost hearing in one side, he has hearing aids. Yep. So because he lost hearing in the one side, he has a bicross situation where it sends the signal to his hearing side. He also has what's called a Roger. Like if we're at dinner, he sets it on the table and he can better hear it, kind of blocks out some of the background noise. But I mean, it took us 3 years to get to this point after losing hearing and figuring out all of this. So that was his initial diagnosis. Then he got the gram-negative bacterial meningitis,
Right.
ventriculitis, and hydrocephalus.
Right.
3 years later, now he has another diagnosis of central and obstructive sleep apnea. Because they were, anytime, this is good to know, traumatic brain injuries, anytime somebody has a brain injury, concussion, traumatic brain injury, brain surgery, it affects your ability to breathe when you're sleeping.
Okay.
Because your brain does not send the signals to the body to breathe.
Oh.
So, especially since they worked so much on his brainstem, that's the central sleep apnea that he has, and he has a severe case of it. They initially thought it was insomnia, then they did sleep tests and everything and discovered. So that's a new addition to our lives, and it's made a huge difference. Granted, he has a lot more to go because of that, but the fact that he now gets 6 hours of sleep a night affects his energy and stamina.
Right.
You know, so our lifestyle is changing again.
Right.
It's like, oh, you know, when he used to like kind of sit down with his laptop in his recliner at night, it's like last night he was outside mowing the yard, and I'm like, I got to pay attention because now he's picking up some energy and things. I don't know if he'll ever be able to ride a bike, but we're looking at, you know, the trike situations, electric bikes. We're looking at different things like that. You know, so our lifestyle's changing again.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what the diagnoses were. What he was, when I mentioned he got referred out to University Hospital, he had talked to several people. And here's where you need to advocate for yourself. I'm very proud of him. He got the MRI and it showed the brain tumor. And the end, he's like, I want you to talk to my neurosurgeon. Steve talked to the neurosurgeon. The neurosurgeon was a jerk. And he's like, a brain, a neck, a shoulder, they're all the same. I kid you not. And Steve's like, oh no, this guy's not touching me. So he had talked to a lot of people, and they're like, you need to go out to Dr. Cass at University Hospital. And he talked to somebody at the VA who had been trained by Dr. Cass. Dr. Cass also does time at the VA. All these God winks that happened, and the fact that he was outsourced, and the fact that the VA doesn't do brain surgery. Thank God. You know, all those things. When he met with Dr. Cass, I was not going to these doctor's appointments with him, which was another God wink because I needed all that time for going through a coma and recovery with him. Otherwise, I'd have been taking time off of work. And I remember talking to him after that appointment, and I said, what do you think of this guy? And he goes, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. 30 years. His specialty is acoustic neuromas. And the neurosurgeon that he's like, you got to meet with the neurosurgeon too. And the neurosurgeon is base of the skull surgeries only. That's what he does.
Oh.
And so they do these surgeries together 3-4 times a week. You know, Tuesdays and Thursdays are their operating days. And so I know, you know, when you're dealing with neurosurgeons and people, this is their specialty. And they're like, you know, Steve's a walking miracle. But I know it when I see it on their faces when we go back for checkups. They smile ear to ear. They're like, we are so glad you're here. Literally. You know, literally that's what they are meaning.
Right.
And you know, they're like, it was God and your nutrition that you had in your body before you went in on your first surgery that allowed your recovery to go so well. Because we actually know family members whose kid, there was another Rhonda there, and her son Gentry did not recover. He's now 23, 24. Half of my husband's age.
Really?
Yes.
What's the name of the base of the skull surgeon, neurosurgeon?
Dr. Youssef, Sammy Youssef, Samy.
How do
And
you spell Youssef?
Youssef.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there in the hospital, and you read everything that's on the hallways. Normally you just kind of blow by them, no big deal. I'm taking pictures of this stuff. It's like regionally known and everything. I still have those pictures to this day because they've won awards for the neurosurgery department out there. People would get flight for life up from Arizona, from New Mexico, all over the region, the Rocky Mountain region, out to University Hospital. So.
Was there a reason they waited for?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So November 10th is when he was diagnosed. It's a teaching hospital. They had teaching engagements outside the country.
Oh.
And so they teach at conferences. So I mentioned before where he's the poster patient.
Mm-hmm.
They literally use his pictures when they're teaching the methods.
Okay.
And so they had multiple conferences. They had to get the two of them in town together on the same days. So that his first availability was March 10th. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
They only do acoustical.
That's all they do.
Okay.
Now I've since learned the other neurosurgeons have a specialty.
Yeah.
So I met a gal last night. This is an interesting thing. You never know when things will come full circle. When Steve went for his second emergency surgery, Dr. Abash was on call that night and had never seen her, never heard of her. Normally you know the names or whatever. I'm like, where'd she come from? And she was on call. She did the 3-hour surgery. I saw her that night and I saw her the next morning. She talked to me and never saw her again. I'm like, literally, what is it? I mean, I had to Google her to find out who is this person? And last night I met a gal who Dr. Abash does, her specialty is epilepsy. And she had done epileptic surgery just a couple of months on this gal that I met last night. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's her specialty. She just happened to be on call. And her genius move was Steve had the scar here, and some people would have gone back through that opening. Well, they didn't want, so when Steve ended up back at the hospital, his neurosurgeon was out of country again for a couple of weeks, and he was like communicating where did they do the incision, because they didn't want that transplanted nerve to be disrupted.
Right.
So she didn't go back through this. She did a 7-inch right up the neck, back of the skull, and accessed his brain that way. And when she came out, she goes, I got it all. And I'm like, how can you be sure? And she's like, well, it was an orange rind sitting on his brain. I could see it. And I'm like, seriously? And she's like, I could see it, and I know we got it.
Wow.
And so that right there is a bone. They had to cut that bone out. And they couldn't replace it. They couldn't put it back in, so they put, I call it cosmetic concrete back in his head, which is another thing you have to deal with, because infectious disease, you now have another foreign object in your body and everything. And she stitched him back up, and she said, he's good to go after 32 days of coma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I'm open, because I'm like, I would really like to know some of these things that happened, and so things kind of dropped back into my life, and so I found out Dr. Abash is going to the University of Nebraska. She is going to be the first department head of a neurosurgical department in the country.
Jeez.
And so she's leaving here, but going to continue her genius work.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, so it's an amazing story, and I just love being out and talking about it, because we were truly lucky in many ways, and that's why when my editor said, well, let's call it God Winks and Miracles Happen, I'm like, yes, for sure.
Right.
It gave me goosebumps when she first said it, you know, and I'm like, that's exactly what happened.
How did you find out that the brain tumor or sleep apnea can be caused by a brain tumor?
Oh my goodness. Lots and lots and lots of research.
Really?
Steve's a researcher. He's been reading up. He's in an acoustic neuroma group on Facebook. So there's a lot of discussion that goes on. It's
Right.
like, are you sleeping through the night? This and that. So that started planting the seed. And ironically, before he went in for his first surgery, they had done a sleep study and they had lost that sleep study. I don't know how you lose a sleep study, but anyways, they did. They were testing him for that before. So here we are 3 years later, back doing a sleep study. And he just was like a dog that wouldn't let go with the VA. He's like, no, we got to figure this out. I mean, he had done some other testing. Okay, it's not that, because they thought he might have an internal bleed that was dealing with energy issues. And okay, we're not dealing with that, you know, everything. So it was a process of elimination, and it came down to this. And he really did a lot of research on, and we had some people say, and he works with retirees, military retirees, and they had been commenting to him, you need to look at sleep apnea because you're probably not breathing and everything at night. And he was getting 3 hours of sleep a night. So, you know, that's not good for anybody, especially not in his situation. And so it was just a matter of going through the motions. It was 4 months. So it's taken us 4 months to get him to this point. And he's making minuscule progress. But I can see that it, you know, just like last night, you know, he was mowing the yard, and I'm like, normally he would be down and out, you know, after dinner.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and when you suffer from sleep apnea, if you don't know this already,
Right.
when you stop breathing, then that cuts off the oxygen to your brain.
Right.
So it all works together,
Yeah.
and then that
Yeah.
causes all of the other symptoms that they may not ever correlate with lack of oxygen to the brain.
Yeah.
And sleep apnea is a very large risk
Yes, it is.
of death.
Yep.
So we can talk about that later, but
He ended up with a CPAP machine, and I'm like, you know, you hear the old stories of this huge contraption and everything. His CPAP machine's silent. Absolutely silent. And they asked him when he went and got it if he was a mouth breather. It depended on if he had a mask or just a nasal thing. And, you know, it's amazing. If he wakes up in the middle of the night, he's right back to sleep, where that didn't happen before. He would be awake for 2 or 3 hours, or awake period for the rest of the day. So anyways, but I'm here. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we can purchase your book today?
You can, yeah. I have, it's 15.
Okay.
And so cash check or charge, I can do a charge as well.
Okay.
And I'll sign up for you.
I'm good.
yeah, she winked.
Well, I have people who, because you can buy it on Amazon too, and I'm like, we have to like connect and everything. We have friends up in Greeley, and I'm like, bring your book with you. We saw them at Easter, and I'm like, I'll sign it for you.
Yeah.
And stuff. I have people show up and say, here, you need to sign it and everything. So, yeah,
So let's pass leads and let's start with Don.
there you go.
I have none right now.
Oh, you have a little hinge.
I was gonna say I have a lead for Sue.
Yeah, Rhonda gave me a lead.
Woo!
No, I do not have a lead.
Lonnie's looking at my stuff.
I am.
I had a lead for Lori that we, acquaintance of mine had a customer that's looking for financial advice from marketing services. So,
Yep.
yeah. Yes, sorry. Do you want more? I'm sorry.
Usually you have more.
No.
Not necessarily for me.
I'll
Okay.
click on retainer.